let's do this.
Every time I make a video on PHP, which is basically all the videos I make, I get the exact same comment.
Oh,
PHP
that's
is
way
dead.
loud.
PHP sucks all the time, every time. And most of the people that think PHP is dead haven't looked at PHP since like 2012, which is before.
Okay, so maybe he is saying exactly my experience, which is I haven't looked at PHP since 2012, 2013. I think the last time, I kid you not, I was such a PHP dork that in 2013, there's Git, there's Go. I mean, Node was technically taking off. I started a new project. This was back when I was trying to do startups. I was always trying to do little tool startups and all that. And I started a new project using Tortoise SVN and PHP, okay? 2013, I did that. In 2013. I want you to know that right now, because if you don't know that, you just don't understand how painful my life was. I didn't know about all these cool things. You know, this is back in my day when I wasn't in my exploratory phase. But nonetheless, Tortoise SVN in the day of Git.
5.4 came out, and listen, things were a lot different in 2012. I had just graduated college.
Beautiful
with
picture.
A degree in accounting for some reason. This guy was still the president over here.
That's
movie
many
was in
presidents ago.
theaters, and honestly, pretty good movie. Our music.
Okay, first off, can we just agree that Looper was actually a pretty good show? Okay, whatever that guy's name is, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, something like that. I like him. Okay, I loved him on Third Rock from the Sun. Okay, I loved him there. Tommy, I believe was his name, and I love it now. Okay, yeah, I like it. Bruce Willis, okay actor, but Joseph Gordon-Levitt, whatever his name is, loved him.
Went through this real weird hey ho phase where we were always shouting hey ho in the songs. So I think it's safe to say that a lot has changed
2012
since
was
2012.
weird.
I'm no longer an accountant, and PHP no longer sucks. I'm going to run you through a bunch of the language changes that have happened since around 2012 when PHP 5.4 came out. And stick around to the very end because we're going to talk about types. We got to talk about type safety. Every time I talk about PHP, people just say, yeah, I just need types. We got to have types. What about types? Do you guys have types?
Yes, this is me. I'm this person. I'm literally that person. Are you winning, son? Are you winning, son? No, I am not winning, son. I must have types. It's the same reason why I didn't choose Elixir as my first functional language, but instead OCaml, because OCaml is a very strict, beautiful, static typing language. And so this is like, I've always had this problem. I do want to follow up on one more thing he said, that I was such a PHP fanboy, and that was during the height of my like maximum hours I worked per week. I was doing like 80 hours a week of PHP, 5.4 or whatever it was. I was into PHP. So I'm actually excited to see the new things that have happened to PHP since then. And can I like feel that it's a good language? I don't know. I'm willing to have my mind remain open for this.
Can't leave my types. We've got types. So I'm going to show you all the different types you can do at the end. Let's say
PHP beat JavaScript to types. You should feel bad about yourself if the language in which the original author said it should have never been a language was able to beat you to types. You should feel bad about yourself, okay? You came out like, just feel bad.
take a look at these changes. Going all the way back to 2012 for this one, PHP 5.4 included traits. So instead of writing the same method body over and over and over, or instead of abusing inheritance, we now have composition. So you can have traits and include those in every class.
What? Oh, I think I like PHP. Oh, my goodness. What?
Favoring composition over inheritance.
PHP is actually better than JavaScript. I can't even believe it. It's real. It's real. Look, he even put my name in there. What a nice guy.
Short array syntax. Imagine writing out the word array like a caveman when you can just use square brackets. Short array syntax allows you to use square brackets. Thank you very much.
Let's go. Thank you.
We now have array destructuring. It used to be that you'd have to assign an array to a temporary variable and then reference those elements by index if you wanted to assign them to other variables. Now, you can just use array destructuring and
PHP actually is it really gonna be a good language? This trait thing just blew me away, and now they're just doing basic conveniences for every developer. This is good. This is good. Like PHP, welcome to modern programming. I like what I'm seeing.
directly assign the variables from the array. We have first-class variadic functions, so you can pass as many arguments to a function as you want using this
I don't know how I feel about variadic arguments. I keep going back and forth on them, like if they're a good idea or a bad idea. I never know. Do you know what I mean? Like, do I like them or do I not like them? Because ultimately, whenever I get to variadic arguments, I almost always want to use a function with an array or a list as opposed to actually spelling out the arguments one by one. I almost never actually want variadic arguments. Like almost never. Almost never. Because anytime you're doing something programmatically, you almost always this right here, right? You almost already have the nums array, and now you have to ... Yeah, printf is a good example where it's really, really good. But printf is unusual. You don't really use, like, formatting functions, I'm on for variadic stuff. I can completely concede that ground. And things like formatting or string, like rope string generation, anything like that, totally on board with that. ...
syntax. Speaking of ... syntax, you can use that same syntax to spread or splat an array into an argument list for a function
Splat
call.
me, Daddy
you can
Aaron.
use that same syntax to spread or splat an array into another array. So if you want
Okay.
to take all the items
Okay.
from one array and put it into a second array, you can do that.
Again, this is very, very good. Also very, very interesting because this is a great way to create a lot of memory on accident.
That with this spread
This is
operator.
base.
We
Yeah.
now have generators. If you want to do something memory intensive, but in a memory efficient way, you can use a generator. So if you need to read a huge file, you don't have to load that whole file into memory. You can use a generator to yield it line by line by line. If you ever need a new class but can't be bothered to make a new file, who has the time, you can create an anonymous class.
Let's go! I love that! I love this idea that classes are just as much first-class citizens as functions. This is great. This is great because there are times where you just don't want to do that, and you really just need this right here. This is great. This is actually great. Wow, PHP has a...
Anonymous class can implement an interface.
Okay, you know what? We're pausing this for a quick second. I'm hopping over to Twitter, and maybe PHP isn't all that bad anymore. We're shook, okay? We're shook right now. We're shook. Oh no.
Just like every other class. And so this is a great use case for when you need one stupid little implementation, but you don't want to make a full class for it.
Yeah.
This is a big one. I need you to pay very, very close attention. We now have trailing commas in function calls. So look very closely at email. Look at the very end of the word email and watch what's about to happen.
Oh my goodness. Oh boy. I actually just added a brand new emote just last night. There you go. Thank you. Can we get some whats in there? We need some whats. This is just what I want. This is what I want. Can we get some whats? I need it. I feel it. This is wet ass programming going on right now. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. What? Oh, love it. I love it. I love it.
Amazing. We now have trailing commas in method calls, PHP rules. This one's for all.
Okay, well, okay, trailing commas ain't making PHP rule, but I'm on your team though. It's pretty nice, okay?
My JavaScript friends, I know you love your arrow functions. Well, look out, friends. We've got arrow functions too. Ours, honestly, are, well, they're a little bit worse. I don't like the FN at the beginning to denote that it's a function, but hey, we work.
I actually like the FN at the beginning. Real talk, I like that. I've never really loved the arrow syntax. I like the idea of it being very consistent. I like this. This is perfectly fine with me. This is beautiful.
Work with what we've got. We have short closures or arrow functions. PHP 7 brought us the null coalescing operator, so we can say the username is equal to the username unless the username is null, in which case we'll go with guest. So we have this nice, neat null coalescing operator, but we also have the null coalescing assignment operator, which can shorthand all of that and say, if the username is set, leave it alone, otherwise set it to guest.
I think I understand what a PHP gasm is. I think I just had multiple PHP gasms in a matter of minutes, okay? I don't know what's going on here, but we're gasming, okay? Whatever it is, it's happening right now. It's happening.
Speaking of nulls, we used to have to do something like this. We would pull the birthday off of the user, and then before we were allowed to call a method on birthday, we would check to see if birthday existed.
Yep, okay.
Because you don't want to call a method on null.
Yeah.
But now we have the null chaining operator, and we can just say if birthday is not null, call the format function on it. If it is null, just stop the chain right there. We have named arguments now. It used to be that if you wanted to skip over an optional argument, you had to leave a null in the position of that argument, but now we can just name our arguments and pass them in any order that we want. PHP has attributes now, which in other languages are probably called annotations, but you can add an annotation.
I actually like this, okay? I like that. I don't care what you have to say, okay? You come in here with your, oh, PHP is becoming C#. Okay, well, first off, PHP doesn't have a history of triple E actions / they didn't give us the world, they didn't give us VS Code. I mean, they did give us WordPress, which one could argue is worse than VS Code. But nonetheless, look, this looks great. Okay, I love this kind of stuff. This kind of stuff, to me, is fantastic. I've never had a huge problem with this. Because at the end of the day, you have this whole problem with like Go. You have to like specify everything, and it can kind of look a little, I'm over here. Maybe my Go's not that great yet. But this kind of stuff where you're just like doing this. I don't know how I feel about that either. You know what I mean?
To a class or a method or an argument or a property, you can add an annotation to almost anything and control a little bit of behavior that way. Keep this in mind. We're going to look at this again in a second. This one is just a huge, massive improvement. It used to be when you were catching an exception, you had to have a variable for that exception, even if you weren't going to use it. Even if you were just simply going to return false, you had to have that little E in there.
Yep.
Now, look at this. Watch this. Watch that E.
I'm watching.
Amazing. No longer needed. If that's not reason enough to switch to PHP, I don't know what to tell you.
Ain't no way.
Remember those attributes that I told you about literally 2 seconds ago? There's an attribute that will mark an argument as sensitive and redact it from all stack traces, so you don't accidentally end up logging something you shouldn't at a language level. Very cool.
Okay, that is genuinely awesome. This is genuinely awesome. This is actually okay. So this is one of those things that I would say is super cool. That is super cool. Can we all agree that that is out of this world? This is great. Weird and probably very slow. Maybe. Maybe it's only slow on the exception case. One could imagine that it's slow purely on the exception case, right? And it has no real-world implications on performance in any sense.
Cool. Look at this switch statement. It's hideous. It's huge. We hate it. What we're doing is we're switching on a status code, and then in the body of every status, we're setting a message variable. There's got to be a better way. There is a better way. We can use the match statement now and assign the message variable to the result of the match statement. And look, at 200, 300, we can have multiple matches return the same thing. This is a much more compact, much more readable way to write a switch statement that assigns a variable. We've got weak maps now. Did you know that PHP has weak maps? You can set an object as a key in a weak map where you can't do that in an array. And also, weak maps are way better for memory because they'll get garbage collected when there's no references to that object anymore. PHP now has enums, so you can have an enum class where you delineate the cases inside the body of that class, and those enums can also have a value. So if you want to use the words draft, published, and archived in...
I mean, this ain't that impressive, okay? I've been having nothing, but I've had however many section gasms that are available, and then you just hit me with a basic enum. this ain't it. Okay, this ain't impressing me right now.
Your code base, but you want to use the values 1, 2, and 3 in your database, you can do that with a backed enum. That's not all that enums can do. You can add methods to your enum classes. In this case, we'll add a method that gives a user-friendly display to each of the
Java
enums, and we're
1.8 or
using the
something
match
like that.
statement
Cool.
again, and we're just matching against this, and all of our cases are our enum cases. One of the great things about having...
I mean, it's still better than TypeScript enums. Can we all agree that somehow TypeScript enums are actually worse? You know, like at the end of the day, as much shit you want to talk about that enum that we just saw, somehow it's still worse. Okay, Beastco, stop with your C#. It's not C#. It's PHP. I love today. Okay, birthday boy Beastco. By the way, YouTube, you better wish Beastco happy birthday in the comments, okay? I expect to see it. I expect at least 100 happy birthdays when this video goes out.
First class enums is you can now use them as type hints. So if a method is expecting an enum, you can hint that enum class, and that way PHP will validate that the incoming argument is that enum. All right, here we go. We're going to run through a bunch.
What does that mean, validate? I'm curious what that means. If you just pass in any old int, will it say, hey, I can't validate it? Or will it throw an exception if it doesn't match? Does it have runtime implications? A little bit more curious about that last one. Okay, so this is the big one. This is the big one. Types, and more types.
Two of the ways you can add types to PHP. First, you can have typed arguments. In this case, we're saying A and B must both be integers. This is a scalar type hint. You could also type hint classes or enums like we showed earlier. You can have return types. In this case, we're saying it must also return an integer.
Like this.
That makes enough sense. If you're adding two integers together, it should return an integer. But not all numbers are integers. Some numbers are floats. So you can also have union types. You can say int or float.
Rock on. Rock on that one. I'm liking that. I'm liking that a lot.
And it can return an int or a float. If you wanted to add more than two numbers together and you have a variadic function, you can also use types for that. No problem. Let's move on to a class. Here we're saying that the argument input must be of type foo or bar. This is the union type that we just talked about. But you can also...
By the way, I like types on this side as opposed to the other side. Call me crazy, but I like to read the type before I read the variable name, as opposed to reading the variable name followed by the type. Okay, so, things like Rust, Go, and TypeScript all have variables on that side, whereas like C, that's kind of what I grew up on, was like C and Java. It's on the other side. For me, I've just always liked it. There's some argument for it, right? That's old. Yeah. You're not crazy. It CPP shill, maybe. Type left stick in my brain. Yeah, it does. Are you crazy? Called it. Come on, Pick. It just feels right. You know what I mean? And I also think that int array is better than an array of int. I just don't. That's one thing about Go that always kind of irks me a little bit. But the fact that Go compiles super fast, I don't give a damn. You know what I mean? If you can compile an entire project in 0 seconds, you know what? Tell me how you define your ints. I'm just fine with that. You tell me. And I don't care, right? Like, I have various levels of what I care about, and that ain't it. Hey, thank you, King. I'll say thank you in a second. We're kind of, we're like in the middle of something, okay? You know what I mean? You know what I mean, dog? Okay, it's Beastco's birthday, so I want you to say happy birthday to him.
Have an intersection type where you say that the argument input must be of type foo and bar, which is really helpful when you're trying to ensure that an argument adheres to more than one interface, but you don't care what the type of object is. As long as it adheres to foo and bar, you can do whatever you need to do. You want to get even crazier. If you want to ensure that input is foo and bar or it's nullable, you can have a disjunctive normal form type. And I had to...
He's about to say I had to go look up that. But a disjunctive normal form type, that literally sounds like a disease you would be classified with your doctor. It looks like you have disjunctive normal form type.
Learn those words for this specific video. You can have foo and bar or allow it to be null.
By the way, Pick right now is like, actually, in Haskell. Pick, I can feel it coming. Pick, I know it. Look at this. That's something that will make your balls fall. I thought you were going to give me some insightful comment, Pick. I actually thought I was going to get an insightful comment. Instead, I got, this is going to make your balls fall. So, this is the benefit of doing things live. You know what I mean?
Look at another example. We've been typing arguments, but you can also have typed properties. So if you look at this class,
Okay, I
you'll
like
see
it.
that the public title property is of type string, and the public date property is of type date time. Now this
Like
is
it.
a little repetitive, isn't it? We've got the two
You can
properties
drop
at the
one of them,
top.
can't you?
We've got the two arguments in the
it'll
constructor,
infer it?
and then in the constructor we have to set the class level properties.
I totally forgot that you have to do 2 underlines for construct. Was that always true? Was this always true? I honestly can't remember it. It's shocking that I could do something for 80 hours a week for multiple years and forget it.
This is a little verbose. This is how we used to have to do it until the PHP gods introduced constructor property promotion. And now you can put the visibility in your constructor signature. You can say public string title, and it will end up as a public property on your class.
I actually do like that. TypeScript also has this. I'm not sure if that's a JavaScript thing or just a TypeScript thing, but I've always liked this. I think this is very, very good. I don't want to have to specify things twice. Always been a big fan. C#. The C#.
This is called constructor promotion. I don't love that you end up with an empty constructor body, but I do love that it reduces all of that boilerplate. If you want to mark a property as read-only, meaning that it can only be initialized once and then never changed, there's a keyword for that. You can say that a property is read-only, and you can do that in the constructor as well. If your entire class is read-only, you can mark the class as read-only instead of marking each individual property as read-only.
Nice.
A lot of stuff has changed. If you have
By the way, that actually is like these type of changes also allow the just-in-time compilation stuff to be much better, right? You can do a lot more with a language when you have more hints. The more things you have, the faster you can make it, right? The less you know about a language, the less you can really do. You have to, that's why in JavaScript, if you ever look at the memory of any piece of JavaScript, what you'll see is that there's all these hidden pieces of memory, and they're like 30K, 50K, 10K, associated effectively with every single function, because every single function has a huge amount of assumptions being calculated and kept track of such that it can optimize it at some point, right? And optimization is a function of length of your function, which is also bizarre, right? So as your function gets longer, the more runs it has to take, the more memory it takes to actually optimize it, the more things it has to keep track of. It's very, very, it's very interesting. And so PHP with inside like typing and all that, I think that you can do a lot more cool stuff with how fast it runs by simply knowing this information. I love it.
Paying attention, you might think PHP is dead, but alas, it is not dead.
Alas,
Let's talk
it is
about
not.
Speed. Every time I make a video, people are like, yeah but PHP is so slow. PHP between like 5.6 and 7 experienced a 400% performance increase, and then I think another 20% between 7 and 8.
I heard you're supposed to talk to a doctor if you exceed 400%. Is that still true? Or is that different now? Or you can go longer than 400%? Giggity giggity? Long as you say that,
PHP is
can't
not
confirm.
as slow as you remember. So if you need something like 50,000 requests per second, you should probably still not use PHP for that. But look at me, listen to me. When have you personally needed 50,000 requests a second? How many users do you have? So
That was so based. That was like the most based take of all time right there. That was so good. That was so good, dude. Just get wrecked. Just get wrecked.
PHP is fast enough. It is fast enough for most of your use cases. And if you need a specialized use case, use a specialized language. But the PHP of yore is not the same as the PHP of today. It is much, much faster. It is much, much better. And it is not dead. See ya.
I really liked some of the ways he said things. I really liked that he called it the PHP of yore. That was beautiful. By the way, go subscribe to Aaron Francis. What a great guy. Not only is he a great guy when I met him in IRL, but also nice guy on Twitter, always super positive. Sometimes I think he thinks that I'm a little bit of a goober. Very nice guy. Go give him a follow. Good guy. I like him. PHP plus HTMX stream. I'm going to be doing Golang because I'm cool. I'm actually cool. But I could imagine that if I wasn't cool, I would consider PHP. Sorry, Aaron, for that last part. But But Melky, I get to do Go too, okay? You can't go back to Rust. I don't want to go back to Rust right now, okay? Okay, I did 2.5 years of Rust, and I use Rust like full-time now or part-time, and sometimes you need a break from what you're doing, okay? I don't want to be in the Rust world anymore. I want off that wild ride of Rust, okay? OCaml then? But the problem with OCaml is nobody knows what's happening. When you show somebody OCaml, no matter how many times you hear in chat, it's actually more intuitive. Nobody thinks that. Okay? Nobody thinks functional programming is more intuitive. And all these people that tell you that have just drank so much Kool-Aid, they cannot see the forest for the trees at all. The name is I could actually like PHP, a gen.